Girls, we are going to look at both readers and writers through the story Verdi by Jenelle Canon. She also wrote Stella Luna. Something I want to point out is Verdi is going to discover that growing up can be difficult. But today, for readers and writers, we've been working on a narrative, and we've been looking at the big thing that happens and how to work backwards from that and then how to wrap up after that. And this is another way to look at writing a story and making sure you have the elements to keep your reader engaged. And readers, this is a way to track your story and look at how the author plotted the story. So we call this either a plot, the plot, or a story coaster. Okay, and it's basically just what is the storyline, what's happening. So today, in your reading journal, I would love it if you would make this story coaster. And the story again is Verdi by Jenelle Canon. And when you do a story coaster, you'll see in your teaching point that I have this picture for you if you can't see it well in the video. But you start with what we call the exposition, or I would call it the beginning myself. And that's generally establishing the setting, any background information, and your characters. From there, writers usually give you 3 things that get in the character's way before you get to the climax. I often call that the formula of 3. You need 3 obstacles before you get to your climax, but they've got to be like strong events. That's your rising action. It's your conflict, or it's 3 things. And you would list them here as you're plotting this out to see if this story has these different things. It also helps you kind of determine and get good at deciding what's important in a story and what's just kind of added detail or what's been elaborated. And then you've got your climax. We've been looking at that as the big thing that happened or the heart of the story. It's that big moment in the story where there's a change of direction in the storyline, like maybe the main character finally figures something out and now resolves some problems and issues that have been getting in their way. So the events change. And then your falling action is your wind down, or like the wrap up where you tie up loose ends and you figure things out. And then lastly, your resolution. The problem is solved. You have an ending. So today I would invite you to go ahead and chart Verdi as I read it. Think about what is its setting and its characters. What is the rising action? What are the 3 big events that happen before the climax, before things change, and we get the resolution, okay? The falling action and the resolution. Because when you write your narratives, you're going to want to make sure you have all these parts. I'm just going to show you this first picture because it's neat. On a small tropical island, the sun rose high above the steamy jungle. A mother python was sending her hatchlings out into the forest, the way all mother pythons do. "Grow up big and green as the tree leaves," she called to her little yellow babies as they happily scattered among the trees. But Verdi dawdled. He was proudly eyeing his bright yellow skin. He especially liked the bold stripes that zigzagged down his back. Why the hurry to grow up big and green, he wondered. Maybe some of the older snakes in the jungle could tell him. Verdi ventured into the treetops to look for them. So here we are again. We got Verdi. Already kind of see what's going to happen here. And by the way, I just love Jenelle's descriptive language, how she includes sensory details. Umbles, Aggie, and Ribbon were lazing on some branches nearby. Verdi peered at their droopy green bodies. "It's not polite to stare," Aggie chided. Umbles burped and groaned. "Ugh. It's taken nearly 4 weeks for that last lizard to digest. I surely do like lizards, but lizards surely don't like me." "Why don't lizards like you?" asked Verdi. "Don't interrupt." Umbles grumbled. Dear me, whined Aggie, if I don't shed soon, this itchy skin will drive me bananas. Verdi tapped a tune with his tail as he waited to speak. Stop that, Verdi. It makes me nervous, Ribbon complained. Besides, you'll never grow up to be properly green, always interrupting and constantly fidgeting. Verdi couldn't imagine being in such a hurry to be like them. And he really wanted to keep his sporty stripes. Hoping to find snakes that weren't so boring, Verdi slipped away. Poor Verdi. Dozer was snoring in a tree not far from the others. Hello, said Verdi. Do you want to climb trees with me? I'm tired, Dozer growled. Go do a few laps around the jungle, okay? Verdi's heart sank. Greens were not only lazy and boring, they were rude. At the top of a very tall tree, Verdi gripped one branch with his tail and another with his little snake jaws. I will never be lazy, boring, or green, he thought. I will jump and climb and keep moving so fast that I will stay yellow and striped forever. Then Verdi let go. There's Verdi. He's so cute. I'm sorry, but that looks like it's kind of wild. There you go. From a distance, the greens watched. My, they chorused. Ribbon shook his head. At this rate, he'll be lucky to make it to his first molt. Aggie nodded. He's likely to put an eye out on a branch, Umbles moaned. He may not live to turn green. There he is, off in the distance. But one day, Verdi's skin began to peel, revealing a pale green stripe stretching along his whole body. He gasped. How can this be? I'm the speediest snake in the jungle, and I'm still turning green. He raced down to the river, grabbing up a mouthful of rough leaves. I wonder how that's going to help. Verdi flung himself into the water. If I can't run this green off, I'll scrub it off, he thought. Snake loofah. His frantic splashing caught the eye of a large bottom feeder, cruising the murky depths. Yum, the old fish hummed. Lunch. Before the fish could haul Verdi under, the frightened snake bit him on the nose. Ahoo! With a blast of his rubbery lips, the great fish sneezed, sending Verdi into the air. Slapping onto the soggy shore, Verdi skidded out of reach. So hopefully you've taken a minute to go ahead and put in what you thought the opening was and maybe a couple of the steps. And I want you to realize that since this is videoed, you can go back and do it again and listen and see if you missed something. Whew! That was close, he sputtered. Every inch of his body was covered with wet, gloppy mud. Kind of lumpy, kind of brown. It sure beats being green. He left the mud on. But the soft brown muck dried into a hard gray shell, and Verdi could barely move. If he even budged, the stuff cracked off in jagged chunks. As each piece fell away, Verdi could see that his body was even greener than before. This is terrible, cried Verdi. He pictured himself hanging around in droopy loops, itching and complaining and worrying all day like the old greens. He looked up into the sky where the sun blazed a beautiful yellow, just the color he used to be. Then he pulled a vine to the top of the tree. Launching himself from the treetop, Verdi startled a flock of colorful birds. He became dizzy with delight, sure the bright sun and his lofty speed would turn him golden again. In his joy, Verdi forgot he would fall back to earth. Whippity whappity whip whap wham! Plummeting through the trees, Verdi landed in a crooked sprawl across a log on the forest floor. He couldn't move. "Help!" he croaked. That looks uncomfortable. As usual, the greens had been watching Verdi's antics. They moved quickly to where he lay. "Didn't we say he would come to this?" Umble said, shaking his head. Aggie sighed. "Lucky thing he's still got 2 good eyes." They gently lifted Verdi up to a safer place where they could watch over him while he healed. Neatly splinted to a branch, Verdi had no choice but to listen to the greens as they gabbed. "Remember how I used to streak across the forest floor?" Ribbon asked. "Quick as lightning," answered Aggie. "And I climbed giant trees like they were nothing. They grew taller then, you know." "The things I dared to run down and swallow," Umbles bragged. "Wild boar were no match for me." Verdi was astonished. "You used to run and climb and hunt giant pigs? What happened?" "Ribbon crashed just like you," Aggie replied. "I took a terrible fall and almost put an eye out. Then old Umbles here nearly choked to death. Now we all prefer the quiet life. A warm perch, a little sunshine, and an occasional good meal." The greens rambled on about their days of glory, and Verdi settled in on his branch. So where are you now in filling this out? Do you have your 3 events? Have we gotten to a climax? What's happening? Finally, one afternoon, Umble said, "Looks like you are ready to go again." He carefully untied Verdi from the branch. "You are welcome to come with us," said Aggie. Ribbon agreed. The 3 greens slipped quietly back into the forest. Verdi wasn't ready to join them. He wasn't sure where he wanted to go, so he just stretched and stayed put until the sun went down. He listened to the forest come alive. The illustrations are just gorgeous. Time passed. The sun and the moon took turns in the sky. Verdi marveled as the full moon grew thinner every night. Then he watched patiently as it slowly grew round again. He wondered why he hadn't noticed that before. Verdi became so green that he blended perfectly with the leaves. He was so still that other creatures walked right by without seeing him. One fine morning, as Verdi basked in the sunshine, 2 small yellow snakes approached. They tapped and fidgeted as they stared. "Get a load of that old green guy," one of them whispered. "Do you think he ever moves?" The other snickered. "I seriously doubt it." "They're just like I used to be," thought Verdi, "and I'm now what I was afraid to be." He looked at his big green body and slowly smiled. "How would you like to climb trees with me?" he asked. "With you?" The yellow eyes were astounded. "I'll even show you my fancy figure 8, Verdi replied, though he was a little worried about putting his eye out. With practice, the 3 snakes performed a perfect triple figure 8. Leaping and looping with his little striped friends, Verdi laughed. I may be big and very green, but I'm still me. And then there's some gorgeous snake notes that I'll go ahead and read to you too. Oh, wait, did I forget to show you this picture after all that? There are double looped figure 8s. Okay. Snake notes. There are about 2,500 species of snakes. From tiny thread snakes, just 4 inches long, to giant reticulated pythons that grow to nearly 33 feet. Snake populations are native to all parts of the world except Ireland, Iceland, New Zealand, and the polar regions. A snake's skin is dry, not slimy as many people believe, and their scales are tough. Depending on the species of snake, scales may be shiny and smooth or very rough. Some snakes actually polish their scales by rubbing them with an oily secretion from a gland by their nose. Ew. While many snakes see very well, others are blind. Most use their nostrils to pick up scents. Snakes use an inner ear as well as other sensors in their bodies to detect vibrations around them. Some snakes have heat-detecting pits in their faces that help them to hunt in darkness. All snakes rely on their delicate forked tongues. As the tongue darts out, it collects chemicals from everything it touches. When it withdraws, it passes over the vermonasal organ in the roof of the snake's mouth. This organ processes the chemicals, providing the snake with important information about its environment. Snakes are carnivorous, which means they eat animals. Their diets can include insects, reptiles, even other snakes, fish, eggs, birds, and rodents. Some of the biggest snakes will eat creatures as large as a deer. Many kinds of snakes can go months without eating. About 25% of the world's snakes are venomous. Their venom is used to quickly paralyze prey and for self-defense. Although most snakes would rather flee than fight, it is smart to admire all wild snakes from a distance. These often shy reptiles will appreciate your respect. Among the many non-venomous types of snakes is the family of giant snakes, Bode, which includes all pythons and boas. While boas are oviviparous, meaning they birth their babies fully formed, pythons are oviparous, which means they lay eggs. Green tree pythons, mothers protect their eggs until hatching time, nearly 2 months. Once they emerge, the baby snakes are on their own. These hatchlings range in color from dark reddish-brown to bright yellow. Approximately 8 inches long when they hatch, these babies grow about 6 feet. After several molts, their skin color changes to the rich green of a mature snake. The young snakes eat insects and small lizards using clever techniques to capture their food, such as wiggling the worm-like tips of their tails to lure their prey within striking range. Adults become adept at capturing birds by curling up and resting motionless in trees before striking. Their unusual coiling position allows them to operate much like a spring. Green tree pythons use constriction or squeezing to immobilize their prey. Snakes are valued by humans for many reasons, including their ability to keep rodent populations in check. These sensitive creatures are an important part of our ecosystem. I love it when authors include information that's nonfiction at the end of a fictional story because it just adds a little more knowledge to what you got from the story itself. So I hope you had an opportunity to fill this out so that you can share it with your class later. And we will talk more about how to write a narrative and make sure that you have good story elements so people stay engaged. See you in class. Bye. Somehow. Here we go.